And I'm Harold Glenn Hall.
I am Cecibel Hull.
We are both survivors of emotional, physical, incest, sexual abuse, and human trafficking as children. We will be sharing our stories of our childhood abuse and our healing journey after surviving the abusive childhood, and how our advocacy work brought us together in our mutual journey of helping other survivors of child abuse.
Please stay tuned on March.
Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing out there this Wednesday evening? Welcome to the Ella Johnson Show. Listen, if you are watching by YouTube, I would really appreciate it if you would just subscribe to the channel since you're there. If you're watching on Facebook, please take a moment and do me a favor and just share this broadcast, because this is one of those kind of broadcasts where you have people on your timeline that could definitely use this and this encouragement, especially if they have ever been through anything like what my guests have been through tonight. I want to give you guys a disclaimer right off the bat. I want to let you know that you might hear some graphic details about their abuse. So don't say I didn't tell you. I didn't warn you, because they're going to just be very open with you tonight. Now, I also want to let you know that if you're watching the broadcast and you have a question for our guest, it's okay. Just put the question in the comment section, because I am watching that and I will definitely make sure that they see your question. If you have something that I'm not asking, you just want to know, they're very open and willing to answer your questions. So I want you guys to think about something. I want you to imagine how you would feel if your mother was pregnant in her womb with two babies. One of those babies don't make it, and she blames you for basically the majority of your life for it. Or how would you feel if your grandmother, these are people we trust, everybody goes to grandma's house because that's just what we do. But how would you feel if you went to grandma's house and she molested you? I know these things are very hard to talk about, but my guests that are on the broadcast tonight lived it, and they wanted to come here to the Ella Johnson Show to tell their story. Welcome, guys.
Hi.
You look so beautiful. You guys did you guys enjoy that picture that I had up there for you?
Yes, it made us smile.
I love it. Well, anything we can do on the Ella Johnson Show to put a smile on your face. But I want everybody to know who you guys are, because you are incredible. You're a wonderful couple. I just love you. And I think that moving forward, we're definitely going to be friends and family. But Harold, you served in the Army.
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, thank you for your service to this country. Awesome. You were both CEO and founders of It Was Me campaign. You're both CEO and founders of Incest Survivors United Voice of America. And you're also advocates against childhood and sexual abuse. And your advocacy is what brought you guys together. And you're sitting there having been married for 6 years. Everyone wants to hear this story tonight because it is an incredible story. Welcome to the Ella Johnson Show.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, listen, I want you guys to relax, because we're going to have a good conversation tonight, because people are watching this broadcast and they want to hear your story. I heard it. I cried, because I can't imagine that someone went through so much back to back that you guys did. And you're sitting here today alive in your right mind and able to tell that story, right? We're in our right minds. Now, if you guys are okay,
Hopefully, right?
hopefully. Well, if you guys are okay, I'm going to take a drink tonight during the broadcast. Is that okay?
Yes.
Everybody's good? And you can have yours too. In fact, we're going to take a moment to toast you guys. I want to toast Harold and Cecibel for being on the Ella Johnson Show, and to success and for survival. Let's talk about that. Let's toast. Wonderful. All right. Now we're going to talk about some pretty tough stuff tonight, both of you guys. This is a 2-part series, everybody. So if you don't get it all tonight, come back tomorrow night, because this story is so deep that we have to break it up into 2 nights. So tonight is just part 1. And then tomorrow night, we're going to bring someone else onto the broadcast that's going to help us get an understanding of why and how these types of things happen. Okay. So Harold, we're going to start with you, because what my guests don't understand is that both of you went through some stuff. You went through hell, to put it lightly. You went through hell to get to this little heaven that you know of now. I want you to take us all the way back to the beginning. And I know that's back because it started back. And then we're going to get to Cecibel. we're going to break it up, talk to both you guys, and then, kind of get an understanding of what you went through. Tell us about the young Harold. Tell us about him.
Well, I was born in February 15th, 1954, with a twin, Carolyn, my twin sister. We were 2.5 months premature, which is, in those days, was very rare for infant to survive. And I was put in an incubator and for several months, and depending on what you hear from family members. And my sister died within hours of birth. And my mother, her mind snapped. They had to sustain her in the hospital bed, and she vowed that I would never be her son. And when I was in the hospital in the incubator, my mother refused to come visit me. It was my father and my aunts and uncles that came to check on me. And of course, I don't remember all that. This is what I've been told over the years.
Right.
So from the moment of my abuse, or my birth, the abuse started. And of course, the abuse started as little things. My mother refused to feed me. She refused to change me, take care of any of my needs, like bathing me. I was so small that I was put in my father's socks, and they made a bed out of a dresser drawer. So that was my first part of life. And I had aunts and aunts that would come and take care of me. They knew that my mother would not do it, so my aunts would take shifts to make sure I was changed, bathed, fed, because she refused. And it's really hard as a human being to know that you're not loved and you're not wanted. And I would learn this stuff throughout my toddler and childhood.
Now take me back to when you start remembering, so that you can give us a lot more detail. At what age were you when you actually remember what was happening to you?
I was 3 years old.
Okay.
And my mother had slapped me across the room because I wanted to be held. I wanted attention. And she had slapped me across the room, and she picked me up and she slammed me against the wall, had her hands around my throat. And my father walked in and saw her holding me at her shoulder level and beat me against the wall. That's my earliest memory.
What was she saying as she was doing this? Do you remember?
Yeah, she was telling me how much she hated me. She was telling me that I killed my twin sister. For years, I thought I killed my twin sister in the womb.
And you had guilt. You lived in guilt.
Yes, and she told me that I had taken all the food, I had done this, and because I ate all the food that my sister, who was a pound at birth, and I was a pound and a half, that's the only reason I survived, because I killed my sister.
Now, do you have any idea why she was? I mean, I know you were a child, but why was she? She was dealing obviously with the death of a child,
right?
Which is hard, but she also had another child that she needed to take care of. and she just couldn't do it. What is the worst thing you remember as a child
At that level or later?
at that level?
I remember I would crawl up in my mother's, or try to crawl up in my mother's lap, and she would take me and push me to the floor and tell me how much she hated me, or she would grab me and throw me across the room and telling me that she hated me. And that's my first earliest memory.
Now, didn't she make you wear dirty diapers on your head?
That was a few years later. I had two brothers, two siblings that were born 8 years after myself, 7 and 8 years. And she would, when she changed their diapers, she would. We had cloth diapers in those days. We didn't have the convenience of disposable. She would tie them on my head and make me wear them around the house.
When you guys told me this story the first time, I feel the same way today as I did then. You're a child. And did you ever play with toys? Did you watch cartoons? What was normal, if anything?
My normal was I was confined. I was confined in a corner. I was confined in a basement. I was confined wherever she could control me. I was never, ever allowed to watch TV, even though I could hear it. I was never allowed to eat with my family. I was never allowed to have water and food. I pretty much fucked well, not mine, but the family dog for food. And in those days, the family dog got scraps.
Wait a minute. You mean you were fighting with the dog for food?
Yes.
Okay, you have to explain that to me. Are you telling me that they would throw food to the dog and you would fight it for it?
No. I wasn't allowed to have food unless she allowed me to have food. And we're looking back, it was like open a can of Spam, and that was what was supposed to sustain me for a day. So if it was oatmeal in the morning, which I absolutely despise, or it was scraps scraped from the plates and stuff, and they put it on the floor with the pet dogs. His name was Sparky, and I would chase Sparky away from it, and I would eat it. And then Sparky would try to sneak in and get some of it. So yeah, I had to fight.
I know. I can only imagine. So you were hungry a lot.
Yes.
What about going to the restroom? How did you do that? How about bathing? All of that. Did you ever come out for that?
I wasn't allowed to have water, or I wasn't allowed to clean up every day. If I was allowed to bathe, it would be on Sunday, which was the family day to have baths. And it would be after all my brothers took a bath. My mother took the bath first, and then the boys took a bath. And then I was given a bath in the scum and stuff. Yeah, and I wasn't allowed water. So what I would do, I wasn't allowed to use the bathroom. It would be sit there and pee your pants. It would be sit there and mess your pants. You don't move. Well, I was in such fear I wouldn't move. And then so when I did use the bathroom, I would turn on the sink water, or no, I would turn the sink water was turned off. My mom would physically turn the sink water off when I went in the bathroom. So I would flush the toilet and I would drink water out of the toilet.
You drank water out of the toilet?
Yes, ma'am. Many times.
Yeah, okay. So you drank water out of the toilet. How long did that happen? Did it go on like that you were sleeping and having to live in the basement? At what age did it change a little?
I didn't sleep in the basement until years later.
Okay.
My I was abolished from the house. I was not allowed in the house.
So she didn't want you anywhere in the house, anywhere near her.
No.
Just wanted to act like you didn't exist. And what kinds of things did she used to say to you?
Well, she'd say all kinds of things. How much she hates me. How much she wishes I was dead. She would kill me if she wouldn't go to prison. Every day was how much she hated me for killing my sister, and to me I was dead, or to her I was dead. I didn't exist. So the first time was she put me on a porch, which was supposed to be screened in, but it was the screen was torn down. And we come from a very, very poor family, and I've always said poor white trash, but I shouldn't say that. And I lived on the front porch in an orchard with a maggot filled mattress with rodents that came out of the cesspool. We call them septic tanks now, but they're cesspools which had a cover on them, and the cover was broken, and the rats would come in and they would come in and bite me in the middle of the night. So I would stay awake all night to protect myself. And that was the start of living outside.
So you were living outside on the porch on a mattress.
Mm-hmm.
While everybody, what about when it got cold?
Didn't matter. I didn't have bedding other than a quilt. And of course, the quilt was urine stained and was dirty and filthy and ragged and torn. It was, but that's all I was allowed to have.
Now those tears, what does that mean for you right now? This is bringing back some painful memories, I know.
These tears mean that I am reaching out and sharing something that was so painful. Even after years of my healing and advocacy, it's still there.
I can imagine. Imagine. Now take me to the teenage Harold. What was that like? Because I mean, you weren't in school? You couldn't have been in school, right?
I was in school, but can I back up?
Absolutely, please.
When I was moving past toddler, and I started elementary school, I never go to what do they call before you go to first grade? Preschool.
Pre-K.
Mm-hmm. I didn't go to pre-K, and I was forced to go to school in dirty clothes. I wasn't allowed to take a bath or shower. My clothes weren't washed by my mother, and so I had urine stains, and I smelled like urine. I smelled like dirt, and when I went to school, obviously I was bullied throughout the elementary time. So that was through the whole school of first grade to sixth grade. And the bad thing about it, in those days, nobody intervened.
I was just going to ask that question. That was next. No one said a word. Nobody came, no teacher came to you and said, hey, why do you smell? What's going on? Nothing?
No, I was normally put outside the classroom in a chair with the door open so I can hear the class.
So they wouldn't even allow you in the classroom?
At times, yes.
Because of the way you smelled?
Well, because of the way I smelled and the way that I would daydream. Or I would sleep because I couldn't sleep at night because I was either on the porch, I was in a dirt cellar, I was in a basement with no heat. But so during the day when I went to school, I would fall asleep. And of course, teachers were upset about that, and I was bullied a lot. No, I was bullied more than a lot. And they would put me in the hallway with a dunce cap on. And that just demoralized me more.
Why did they do that?
Because now you got to remember, in the 50s and the 60s, it wasn't what it is today. Child abuse in those days was handled by the SPCA, which is really weird. So there was really no support for any child that was being abused. So they would put me outside the classroom. Or I was so angry and so demoralized that I would act up in class.
And your grades suffered too.
Until I started college, until I started high school, my grades were really bad. And then when I started high school, which I dropped out of, I was a straight A student. So,
wow.
but going back to your initial question, my teen years, we haven't discussed anything about the abuse or sexual abuse or what happened in my mother's home up to this point.
Okay.
Stepping into the teen years, I think needs to be based on what happened within the home. That way we can show the progression.
All right, let's talk about what happened in the home.
From my earliest memory, and I remember it was in a house in Kent, Washington. It was a brick house. And my father had come out of prison and they bought this house. And in my mind today, it's like, how'd they do that? But anyway, so my dad happened to walk in the door when she's choking me. But up to that point of my childhood, I was never allowed to be around my family. I wasn't allowed to be a child. I wasn't allowed to play with my brothers. I had an older brother, a sibling directly under me, and then years later, 2 other siblings. And she taught my sibling under me to abuse me. She taught my younger sibling to watch me. If I did anything, then he was allowed to beat on me. And of course, I couldn't beat back because she wouldn't let me. And she was like, would control me. The real basis of my story is not only the severe abuse across the realm of abuse, because I've been hung by her, I've been tied up by her, I've been beat up by her, I have been sexually molested by her. But the bottom line of the whole thing is being the unwanted child, not having any love within my family.
From your own mom and siblings.
Right. So now my mom. Go ahead.
Let's talk about this molestation. Your mother molested you. Is that what you're saying to me?
Yes.
Oh.
Once my dad went to prison for embezzlement. Jesus. The family story is, and from my dad's own mouth, when I searched him out years later, there was 3 people involved: my mother, him, and a guy by the name of Punk Mitchell, who is deceased. And he took the hit for embezzling and writing bad checks and getting loans that they had no way of paying back. So he went to prison. Well, when my dad went to prison, my mother virtually threw me out of the house. And then the abuse got worse. I took Cecibel back to every house I lived in because it was part of my healing. But one of the biggest or the most fun my mother had is she had a couple friends. They would come over to visit. She would she would humiliate me with a, a dirty diaper tied on my head, or she'd humiliate me by putting me in girls' clothes, or and to a little boy, you're thinking, I'm a man, I'm not supposed to be like this, and then she prayed me around like that in front of her friends. So whenever she did that, they would grab my testicles and they would twist them, or they would squeeze me so bad that I cried or I passed out. So the sexual molestation started with my mother, and she thought it was funny, and it was a game to her. And there's no way to defend yourself when you're a child.
Exactly.
So
I'm going to give you a second here. Cecibel, I want to know, you're hearing this about your man, your husband, your love. What are you feeling right now?
Oh, I've heard his story a couple of times, and it just breaks my heart. It just breaks my heart, and I wish I could go back and save that little boy. Yeah, it's very painful. Yeah.
Because I saw something on your page where you kind of wrote a letter to that effect, saying there was something I saw where you wanted to speak to his mom and
Yes,
just kind of give her some words.
Yes, yeah.
I'd like you to tell me what those words were, because I have quite a few I would have liked to have said to her too. But what were those words? Because I think you said something about your words would do something. They would make her do something. What was it that you said about her words?
I wanted to share my story to her, to see if he would acknowledge her wrongdoings,
Right.
But he doesn't let me, but I would love to talk to her. I won't be mean or anything. I have respect, even though, she abused him, but she's also an elderly lady. She's what, 82?
83.
83.
Respect your elders.
Yes.
I agree. I hear you.
Yeah. So I would just try to reach inside her heart, inside her mind and her soul, so she could, acknowledge. And
you're acknowledging that she has a soul. That's that's pretty good. All right.
Acknowledge that she did so much damage.
She did.
Yeah, to her son. Yeah.
Everybody has a soul. It depends on whether it's white or black.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hers is
thank
black.
you for enlightening me on that. Now let's get back to where we are now in the story. So now she has her friends. I mean, that is just she has her friends coming over. They're touching you, doing all of this. You can't tell anyone. There's no one. The school isn't even inquisitive of what's going on with you. They don't even question why you're coming to school smelling. So at this point, you're basically on your own.
Let's back up on what you said, in that there were people inquisitive, but the downside of that, instead of helping a child, they took the child back to the home. And I can say that about teachers. I can say that about principals that would call her, and as soon as we cleared the school and got in whatever car she had, I was beat. I was beat and beat until she was finished. Or there was times I would run away and the police took me back. And so I was labeled as a rebel child. Yeah. And so it wasn't that people didn't, they tried what they could based on what the laws were at that time.
Thank God they've changed. Thank God the laws have changed.
So back in those days, if a parent, as they call, disciplined you, in my case, physically beat me, then the parent had the right. The parent owned you. I was, to my mother, I was less valuable than the family dog. The family dog came before me.
So what else was going on in the house? Okay, she's molesting you and she's beating you. What else can you remember about those years?
Too much. My mother would tie me up and hang me by my arms with my hands tied, or she would tie a rope around my chest and hang me over a door and tie off on the doorknob on the other side. And then she would beat me, or she let my brother beat me, or she would leave me there on my tiptoes, and which I couldn't move, of course, and that kind of thing. The thing is, throughout my childhood up to 11 years old, I wasn't allowed to be a child. I wasn't allowed to have toys. And I had aunts and uncles that would insist on that I got toys, and she would take them away as soon as they left. I had an uncle that would bring a mattress and burn the maggot field mattress and bedding, and put a mattress out and a new quilt, you know. And as soon as they left, she'd take it away from me, and she put another mattress out there, and basically it was, we call it a spread, but it was a blanket, you know. And so I was never allowed to watch TV. I wasn't allowed to eat with my family. I wasn't allowed to play in the yard. The few exceptions that I remember being able to play in the yard was Big Brothers Association of America, got the three oldest boys, myself included, bicycles. They weren't new. They were used, but they'd been redone and fixed up. And to me, that was the world. Wow,
Absolutely.
you know, that thing could have been rusted, and I would have loved it.
I'm
And
sure.
as soon as they left, she gave it to my brother. Or if I get toys, as soon as I had one aunt that if she gave me anything once, say for Christmas or birthday, as soon as she gave it to me, I played with it. She would take it home because she knew that it would be given to my brothers. And that's one of the sad things about that era. There were aunt and uncles, my grandma and grandpa, who knew this was going on, but they didn't have the courage to face her because of her anger.
Wow. Now, you mentioned your brothers quite a few times. What's your relationship like with them? Because I'm sure there had to be a lot of resentment between you guys.
It's non-existent. I was removed from my mother's house at 11 or 12, and I can't remember which one. And because I was acting out with a cousin, because I'd already been raped and molested by a neighbor lady and a neighbor guy. And so I was acting out. I knew things at 11 years old or 12 years old I should never know. So my aunt called the police, and I went to juvenile.
You were raped. Above.
I was raped more times than I can count. But that moves me into the teenage years.
Okay.
Preteen. When I was 10 or 11 years old, we had a neighbor named Hank. Prior to that, a female neighbor, I was 10 years old and I'm helping her paint the house. Well, the real thing was she had a newborn baby, and it first started off she needed relief from the milk in her breast. Then it was molesting me and stuff, and my mother knew about it and condoned it. And then we had a neighbor move in, Hank, and he had what we know now as a male lover, and that lived with him, but he had been in a railroad accident to where his buttocks had been removed because the car's coupling crushed him. Well, it started off as the normal, as I know as an adult, is the grooming, caring about me, caring about my brother underneath me. Oh, I wasn't allowed TV. Come to my house and watch TV. Oh, you're not allowed to eat, so um, you can eat in my house or candy or whatever, because I wasn't allowed any sweets whatsoever. And to me, being 10 or 11, I'm like, wow, I'd never eaten sweets. I didn't know what sugar tasted like,
Right.
you know. So it was like, wow, this person's giving me attention. And I don't care who you are, as a human, you need love and attention.
That's right.
So then it turned to raping me and beating me like my mother did. And my mother, I went and told my mother one day, and she laughed at me in my face, and she picked me up to where I was by my collar and to where I was face level with her. And she laughed at me, and then the laugh reminded me of a witch's laugh years later, because I didn't know what a witch's laugh was then. And she says, "You deserve no more than that, and you're his bitch." And she threw me in the yard.
Oh.
And then Hank took me, because she told Hank I was his. And then obviously I was beaten and raped by Hank.
Yeah.
So
how were you feeling? I mean, what was going through your mind at this time? Like, you're a child and you're just, did you ever want to die? Did you ever want to kill yourself? I mean, what were you thinking?
Long before that. I wanted to die long before the rapes began. And I've told Cecibel, the abuse was so bad in my mother's house that the sexual abuse, molestation, and rapes were not as bad as being in my mother's house. And that's sad for a little boy.
Yeah.
I wanted to die. I prayed that God would take me probably from the time I was 7 up. I would beg for him to take me. And of course, my anger would also cuss him out, you know.
Yeah.
Because nobody cared.
So now you're a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
You're being raped. You're being molested by mom. No matter where you go, even at school, you're being ridiculed and treated poorly.
I wasn't a teenager. I was preteen.
Preteen. Oh,
Preteen.
That's horrible, because at least
Right.
as you get older, did it let up at all? Did she let up at all the older you got, or was it still the same?
No. It got worse. It got worse. As I got older, I'm going to say 8 or 9, I learned to run away. I learned that when she went to grab me, that I could twist my arm or spin my body. And if I could go between her legs or spin around her, if I could break the grip, I ran. Because I had fought back before. And the results was I was beaten like I'd never been beaten before. She was putting me in my place. So if I knew that I could break her grip on me, then I ran. I ran to the streets. I lived with hobos. I had people that I did their yard, and I didn't know it at the time. I did their yard, and my mom took the money. So this was all preteen. I was removed from my mother's house when I was 11 or 12. I was born.
How did that happen? What caused that to happen?
This used to be one of my greatest shames. And I realized years later, after healing, and I started advocacy and stuff, and spending 30 years in the military, I got more worldly and knowledge. is I was playing house with a young cousin, and she was a year or 2 years younger than me. I can't place what it was. And my aunt caught us. Well, what I was acting out was what I had already been through.
Right.
The things that had happened to me. Well, my aunt, of course, she freaked out, just like I would freak out. You'd freak out, or anybody else freak out
Right.
if you walked in and a child has your child naked in there, and even if they weren't doing anything. And that's what happened. So my aunt called the police, and I was taken to juvenile hall in Seattle, Washington. And as soon as I went to juvenile, they do a physical and they examine me. And then the doctors wanted to know. They wanted to know about the scars. They wanted to know about the bruising. They wanted to know where I'd been ripped open, those kind of things, right? So that began the process of me being removed from my mother's house. I was removed from her house, and I remember being in court with her. I remember her spewing her anger out in the court. I was in court, in which they didn't protect kids those days. I was in court, and she lost her temper, and she stood up in the center of a court, and she told him how much she hated me and how much she wished I'd die, and if she was given a chance, she would murder me in front of the court.
She said that in the courtroom.
In the courtroom. I'm a little boy, I was defiant. I'm like a lot of survivors or a lot of abused kids. I didn't want to tell. I didn't want to tell because that was my home. That was my family. Even though I was being tortured and abused, I still wanted to protect my mother. And this judge took me in her chambers. I'd already been talked to psychiatrists. They'd already talked to me. Doctors had talked to me. I'd been examined, poked, and probed more times than I wanted to count. I was scared. And this judge took me into her, now I know, chambers. And she sat me down and she goes, "You need to tell me the truth. Your body, your scars, your injuries, the bruising and stuff is not what you're telling us." And she got through to that little boy.
Thank God.
And I told her everything.
Wow.
And I was made a ward of Washington State, and then I was put into Briscoe's Home for Boys. That was a Catholic orphanage. Now, but have in mind, I had just come out of hell. I didn't know it at the time that how bad it was.
Right.
That I'm like, wow, I have a safe place. I remember the day I was put in Briscoe, and they took me, and I got new clothes, everything, new underwear, new pants, new shirts, new shoes, new socks, and I was like, I'm in heaven. Oh my God. And I stood in front of the locker when they gave it to me, because it wasn't just one, it was multiple. And you had these little lockers because there was 100 some, maybe 200 other boys from that were the unwanted in society. And I stood in front of that locker for 2 days to make sure nobody stole my clothes. And finally they told me, nobody's going to take your clothes. They gave me a lot to put on the line. So, but then the next level of nightmare started. The next level of hell started. I had just come out of my abusive mother's home. And in Briscoe, we were raped and abused, physically abused for the whole time I was there.
Oh,
Us younger boys, because we had older boys, there was boys that were 15, 16, 17, 18 that would come after us. And the clergy would come after us. You'd be sleeping in bed in the middle of the night, and you hear these footsteps. And as boys, I think there was 5 of us that protected each other. And so we would group together and try to protect whoever they were coming after. And they would take somebody out, myself included at times, and they would take us away and rip us.
oh.
So going from one hell to another until I was 16 years old. And by that time I thought, and my anger was so bad. My anger was so bad, I hated the world.
I bet.
I wanted to die. I absolutely didn't care about life whatsoever. What could they do to me? That was my thought.
Right.
What could they do to me? Just about everything that could be happened to me as a human being had happened.
Now, what kind of facility was this?
It was a Catholic boys home, or they call it orphanage, and it was in the transition of the mid 60s when they were saying, okay, we're going to close down orphanages and we're going to start the foster care program.
Right.
A much better program, so they said. So Briscoe's Home for Boys was, even in there, if you want to Google Briscoe's Home for Boys, in their brochure, it says right in the brochure that it is a home for boys that have been thrown out of society.
It literally says that.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
And of course, it's closed. It closed in 1970.
Right.
So.
And this is where the state sent you. The state
Yes.
sent you to this facility.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever say anything about what this clergy was doing and these other boys? Did you ever say anything? Because I'm sure, did anyone follow up with you and come and see how you were doing?
No.
None of that.
No. The only counseling that I ever got was in juvenile hall, which was several months. I don't remember how long. And I had, what do you call it? Electrotherapy, where they put this thing on your head and you get electrical shots that's supposed to stimulate the brain. And then I was.
Why were you getting that?
Because in those days they believed that it would adjust the brain how it was thinking. I went through hypnosis therapy. I was 12, 13 years old. And one of the things that helped me was the hypnosis. The hypnosis opened up a gate for me where in my mind I was denying it. I didn't want this to be true.
I know. You went through a lot.
Ma'am?
You went through a lot.
I did. I thought people. I thought I was that little boy. I thought I was a killer. I thought I didn't deserve anything. For the next 3 years, I wanted to die.
Did you try to kill yourself?
Yes.
What did you do?
One time I jumped out in front of a train and this elderly gentleman saw me and knocked me clear across the other side of the tracks. I did some childish things that I didn't understand at the time that wouldn't kill me. Like somebody told me you could die with a bunch of aspirin and liquor. So I did that. I did nothing but get drunk and pass out. I cut myself, and I joined the Army to die.
I've never heard that. You joined the Army hoping you would die.
No, I joined the Army knowing I would die because it was during Vietnam. And I was so damaged, so lost, so hurt that they had the draft in those days, and I knew my number was coming up. They used to advertise it on TV and the news. And so I joined the Army. And as soon as I went through basic and what they call individual training, AIT, I volunteered to go to Vietnam. I begged to go to Vietnam. I tried to get them to send me to Vietnam, and it never happened. Because I knew if I could get in Vietnam, I would walk into a firefight and die. But it wasn't meant to be.
It was not meant to be.
No,
it was not.
Now Ellen, can you talk to her, because I got to take a break?
Yeah, sure. I was just gonna say that. Let's get started with Cecibel tonight, so that we can pick up with you tomorrow night from there. Is that good?
Okay, right. That's good.
All righty.
Hi.
Well, hello, Miss Beautiful.
Hi.
How are you? How are you feeling right now?
I'm fine. I'm okay. I always get nervous because it always,
I'm sure,
always hurts. You know.
Yeah.
Every time I hear his story, I cry. The rest of the day, I feel like I'm in a fog. You know, so it's triggering. You know. But
well, I mean, it's because you went through some stuff too.
Yes, I have.
You know.
Yeah.
So I know we're going to pick up tomorrow night, but I want to start just a little bit with you. Just like with him, let's start a little bit about your childhood. Tell me about young Cecibel.
Young Cece, yeah.
Yeah.
I was born into a dysfunctional family, very dysfunctional. My father was an abuser. He would beat my mom. He would, it was whatever he said, that's what it had to be. The physical abuse started very early, 2, 3 years old. That's what I remember. And my father used to beat me, throw ashtrays at me, hit me with the fist. He used to beat my mother. I would watch him with a knife, you know, against the kitchen counter, and he would just beat her, you know. And I would run to try to protect mom, and he would push me, and then he would come after me with the knife, and I would run to a closet and try. I was so little and so skinny that I would hide, and I'll feel him reach out, and I was so skinny that I would push back and not breathe because I didn't want him to find me. I knew that I was going to get beat, you know. And then at age 8, my grandmother was taking care of me, and she told me, I want to check to see if you're growing, if you're becoming a woman. And I didn't think anything about it, you know. And she undressed me and touched me in my private parts. And then she took her clothes off, and then she masturbated in front of me. Oh. At that time, I didn't know what was going on. And I was like, maybe this is normal. Maybe this is what, you know, every grandma does to their grandchildren. And in fact, that's what she told me, that she did it to all the grandchildren that she loved the most. Mm. And so I didn't say anything. She didn't even have to tell me, don't say anything, because she normalized it. So I didn't say anything. Then when I was 9 years old, I was raped by my father.
Oh,
Um,
oh.
yeah, my whole world fell apart. I was raped. I was raped. My mother had gone to work at 5 o'clock in the morning, and he came into the room. He covered my mouth, and he says, "You have to listen to me and don't say anything, or I will kill you." And I was screaming. No matter what he said, I was screaming because I've always been a fighter, you know. And he ripped my PJs, and he raped me. He raped me, and that's where my hell started. Because with my grandmother, that was one incident that happened, and I didn't understand what was happening.
Right.
But over here, this was very painful. This was an attack. He threatened me, you know. So from there on, my father would beat me, would rape me anytime that he wanted. He sodomized me. He would burn my private parts.
Oh.
He would burn my private parts because he knew that if there were signs in my body, people would know. So that would be a place that nobody's going to see easily. So he would burn me. He would while he was raping me in the bathroom, he would try to drown me. He would feel pleasure inflicting pain on me.
Where's mom?
Mom is in the factory working. She woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning and came back home at 8 o'clock. And I wouldn't say anything because he would say, if you say something, I will kill your mom. I will kill your mom, and I will kill you, and then I'll kill myself. There was no way. There was no way that I was going to say anything. There was no way. So I mostly took all the pain was to protect my mom.
Oh,
I love my mom so much. Okay. And but now, as a woman now, there was no way that my mom didn't know. My mom had to know. There were signs. There was a lot of signs. A lot of people saw it.
Has she ever admitted to knowing, or has she denied it?
In the beginning, she denied it, but when she died, she acknowledged it. But at that time, she knew.
So all along, she knew he was doing it.
She knew. She knew. And but for years in my heart, I said no. She was also a victim, and even when okay, I don't want to ruin it. I went through this until I was 14 years old. Every day it was
from 8 to 14.
Yes, every day. In fact, I remember even trying to tell a teacher, and she called my father, and she told her that I was saying these lies. Yes.
Oh my
yes.
God.
Yes, I remember that clearly. And he beat me. I was out of school for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Nobody came knocking at the door. Where's Cecibel? What's happening? No. So, you know what a child thinks is nobody cares. Nobody really cares. I made the effort to tell the teacher. The teacher automatically assumed that I was lying, and she called the abuser. You know,
and not mom, but they all knew anyway. They knew.
Yeah. So I
Did
ran.
He make you pay for it? Did he make you pay for that for telling?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
What did he do?
He sodomized me. Yeah. And this is such this abuse that I went through was such a I felt so lonely. I felt so alone. I felt so alone. I so helpless, so hopeless. I don't even know how to describe what I felt, you know. But it came to a point in my young life that I said, I have to do something. I have to run away. I have to do something because I can't stay here. He's going to kill me, or I don't know. Um, but before that, I experienced something else. He had beat me, and I didn't know that I was pregnant. So
your father got you pregnant?
Yes, he beat me in the floor. I didn't understand why he kept kicking my stomach, kicking my sides and my stomach, you know, and then I started bleeding. I didn't know. I didn't know what was happening. This I know now, that I was bleeding. When I took my underwear off, I saw something. I said, "Oh my God, part of my stomach or something has fallen off." You know, this is how innocent I still was. And I grabbed it and I pressed it, and then I threw it in the toilet.
It was the baby.
It was a baby.
So now what? At this point,
I ran away. I said, that's it. I have enough. Whatever happens, happens. I have to run for my life.
That's right.
So I went to the police. I remember before going inside the building, thinking and saying, oh my God, what are people going to say? Are they going to believe me? Oh my God, this is so shameful. How I'm going to explain everything. And I kept walking back and forth. And then I'm at the entrance and a police officer comes out. He's like, can I help you? Do you need help? And I looked at him and I said, yeah, I need help. But at first I need you to protect my mom. I need you to go and get her now. And he's like, what's going on? And I'm like, my dad has been sexually abusing me for years. He has been physically, sexually, emotionally, and all forms of abuse. And he's like, oh, come in. So I went inside. They took the report. They called my mom. They called an officer to go and pick up my mom at the factory. And I said, okay, finally, I am free. Now I'm going to be happy. No. That didn't end there. You know, yes, my father got arrested. Yes, my father was sentenced to 10 years, which he only did 5 years and 5 years in parole. I was placed in a foster home. And I didn't understand. I'm like, but why are you putting me in a foster home? Because I have my mom. Why can't I go back to her? And you know, right now there's an investigation, and we think that she knew. And I'm like, no, my mom didn't know. Even in court, I testified, and I said no. My mother had no idea of what was happening. He's then the police like, no, but you're gonna be in this foster care until everything is cleared up. And when I go into the foster care, the lady had a son, and the son will go into my room, and I would close my eyes. I would feel him and just close my eyes, and I would see him behind, and he would be masturbating. Though that was a couple of times. And I'm like, okay, maybe he'll just get tired and he'll leave me alone. And no, I was sexually abused there too.
Oh God.
Yeah. Oh, and the first thing that the lady told me after the social worker left, she said, okay, you're here for one reason only. And I'm like, you're here because you're going to clean this house every day. Here's a bucket. Here's all the cleaning tools. And I said, I just said, okay, what I've lived already is, it's been worse. So cleaning the house, hey, I got this, But her son was raping me. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. Social workers, they just threw me in there. They didn't follow up. I'm like, okay, I'm going to say something again. And what are they going to do? I was so confused. So I would run away from all the foster homes that I was physically. I ran away from 7 foster homes.
Were you being molested and raped in all of them?
Yeah. In 3 of them. And the rest was physical abuse. Physical, emotional abuse. So
and you didn't tell anybody about any of this stuff that was going on?
Because I'm like, where are they going to put me now? I'm running away from these foster homes. If I say something, where am I going to end up?
Right.
So I decided not to say anything. Then the police was looking for me, and they put me in they were looking for me after 6 months that I was homeless in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Homeless.
Now, how old were you when you were homeless in New York?
14.
14, walking around the streets of New York City.
Homeless.
By yourself. Where were you sleeping?
In the garbage containers, those big containers, in the alleys. I would sleep anywhere, under a car. So many things. I would eat from the garbage can. I would go into McDonald's and ask for help. Or if I would see somebody throwing their food, I would say, "Can you please don't throw your food out. Give it to me. I'm hungry."
And they would give it to you.
And they would give it to me. Yeah. And sometimes I would ask, for help, for money so I can buy. Nobody would give me money. Nobody would help me. So I had to steal. I had to go to the supermarket and steal oranges, apples, whatever I could find that it was easy for me to just steal. And
what about when it got cold? Because it gets cold in New York. What would you do during those months?
I would just have protect myself with cardboards, plastic bags. Hey, I was pretty smart though, and I would roll myself in plastic bags or garbage cans, do my own little tent. Yeah.
Did anybody bother you when you were out on the streets? Did you ever run into anything harsh out there?
I have to tell you, the street was scary, but much safer than where I was.
Wow.
I met a lot of people, a lot of homeless people, a lot of sex workers, and it was from those people that I had a little bit of love, a little bit of understanding, a little bit of caring. It was from them that I learned, a lot of things.
Now, was it at this time that you met a man on the street that groomed you? Was it during this time that happened?
No, it was after the group home. When I came out of the group home, that's when I met this man that I thought he was my Prince Charming. I'm sorry.
Well, we know that's the Prince Charming sitting right there. But I think this is a good place to stop for tonight.
Yes.
Because tomorrow we'll pick up. If you're just tuning into the broadcast, we're talking with Harold and Cecibel Hull, and they're sharing their true story about what happened to them with emotional, sexual, incest, rape, you name it. They suffered so much, but they're sitting here today and they're advocates for people that are going through those same things, and they're sharing their story. But this is just part 1 I know. I'm sure many of you are sitting there with tissue and, and everything. Me, I have my wine. That's what I have to do to get through this story. Because I feel this story is just so much. And I told you guys when I interviewed you that there's no way we can do this in one night. We have to do it in two parts, because you guys are sitting here and you are a living testimony to what can happen when you just let God take over. And I know at the time you weren't thinking about God. I mean, because both of you were like, you know what? I just want to go be with him. I just want to die, and you should not have had to deal with that. You were children, But I know that you guys are both okay now because you're advocates and you're doing things, but I know it still hurts. These conversations trigger. You just had a birthday too, Harold. I'm going to ask you this before we get out of here. Yes, you had a birthday.
The funny thing about that is the doctors had told my mother when my sister passed, and I didn't realize what a pound and a half looked like as a baby until years later in a micropreemie. As I've always said in my entire adulthood, is I'm on borrowed time, because the doctors had said I shouldn't have lived. So to me, every day is on borrowed time. So that's kind of funny. Yeah, I'm 67.
Well, you don't look like it. You don't look like it at all. I think I read something on your page where you kind of the birthdays, trigger you a little.
They always
because
do.
Still, even now.
Even now.
They don't trigger me because of the birthday.
Mm-hmm.
I am my own angel. I think about her every birthday. And she has gotten me through so much stuff during the abuse in spirit form. But that's always been my anchor. That's always been the tough part about birthdays. I've outgrown the abuse. I really don't really care about how any of my siblings or my mother feels.
Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about all that tomorrow night, because we're gonna get free tomorrow, because we're gonna speak to those spirits, because those are spirits that were just designed to take you out, but you survived it. So we're gonna talk to them once and for all, and we're gonna tell them to go where they belong. We're gonna tell them to go to hell. All right. I believe in that. I think that if somebody is not where they need to be, they need to go home. If someone walked into my home right now and I don't want them here, I'm going to tell them to go. So if a spirit is around you or anything that's around you that doesn't belong, you tell it to go to hell. So we're going to tell them to go to hell tomorrow. And we're going to tell them to go to hell literally, for real.
Yes.
Okay, guys. Well, how do you feel? How do you feel at the end of first part 1?
I feel great.
You're good?
I feel good. Yes.
Well, this show is about healing, and I think that's what we're gonna do, because I was just, my heart was just breaking the entire time, and I've heard all of this before.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I feel great, and I would like to tell the people that are watching is I am not suffering in any way. I have moved through that, but the memories of it will always bring out the emotions.
Yes,
of course.
So in my advocacy and in my speaking, I always let my feelings flow.
Yeah.
Because, how do you say this? Because I learned a long time ago, and I started speaking in 95, is I have to go with the flow of the emotions of the people that I'm speaking with. And that's show my true self.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to get off of here and go wrap myself in a bubble somewhere and wait till tomorrow night, and neither is Cecibel.
Yeah.
That's what makes us strong advocates.
Mm-hmm. And you're together, and you both have your own traumas, and it's beautiful. We're going to talk about how y'all hooked up. We're going to talk about a lot of that tomorrow, because
she trapped me.
No, I did not. Don't listen to me.
But I love it. I love it. I think you guys are a beautiful couple. Well, guys, listen, I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. Don't go anywhere because we'll be right back here tomorrow night, 8 p.m., same time Eastern, here for the second part of Surviving the Storm. Harold, I want to call you Howard. Why do I want to call you Howard? Maybe we need to give you an Ella Johnson show name, right? But the Harold and Cecibel story, that's coming up again tomorrow night, part 2. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much.
And we'll see you tomorrow night. Everyone have a great evening. And make sure you share the broadcast so that people can come in and be a part of this. If you guys have any questions and you think about it after the broadcast, please put them in the comment section. We'll check them, and you guys will be more than happy to answer them tomorrow night, right?
Yes.
Yes. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
All right, everybody. Have a great evening, and we'll see you next time.
Tomorrow.
All right. Thanks for tuning in to the Ella Johnson Show.